This type of situation, I promise you I won't ever be in this type of situation again. I'm going away. I've learned from my mistakes. You know, I come from nothing and I've made something and I didn't take full advantage of it. I'm sorry. Through these last 2.5 years of my life, you are really, truly, honestly, the best thing that has happened to me, because you made everything fair for me and everybody involved.
And so for all the critics, I'm the one that was elected to this seat. We are going to continue to use RICO where it is a legal way to tell the story of what people did.
You got to put on a lot of work, but the work that we need to do foremost for the city of Atlanta, Fulton County, we need to get rid of the poison that's in our system, and that's the district attorney office.
All right, let's talk about this Young Thug guilty plea, because on this channel, we talk a lot about incompetence. We talk about a lot of buffoonery. And this one is definitely a doozy. After all the theatrics and the finger pointing from the state, the so-called gang boss ends up pleading guilty and going home. He pled guilty to RICO charges, gang-related charges, but he gets to go home with probation. And that 5 years in prison, that's commuted to a time served, meaning he's outside, chilling while he's on probation. They slapped him with some kind of anti-gang community service and a ban from Atlanta's metro for the next decade. Real consequences if you're this ruthless leader that they built him up to be, right? What's wild is that this plea deal looks more like the state trying to save face than actually getting justice. After all of the courtroom fumbles, recused judges, lost evidence, and endless delays, they're wrapping up with a guilty plea just to say, hey, look, we did something. We did a good job. Look, this guy, he pleaded guilty. This was a messy scramble. This was a fail. This was no victory. Finally was could walk around pretending that they won, but all they did was let the guy, remember they called the major gang leader, walk free. If this is how they handle high profile cases, imagine what happens when they go after someone who doesn't have millions in the bank. This county is full of corruption and incompetence. This plea deal is nothing more than a fancy way of saying, we blew it, and we need to save face right now. Think about it. Beating RICO charges is almost unheard of. Prosecutors built these cases like fortresses, stacking evidence, witnesses, and multiple criminal charges into one giant case designed to pull anyone linked to an organization down together. RICO was used to take down the mafia. They don't need to prove each defendant committed every crime, just that they were somehow involved in the organization pattern of racketeering activity. RICO's whole purpose is to make it impossible for the so-called leaders of criminal networks to escape. Yet we have Young Thug, after being framed as the leader of the gang, pleading guilty to charges that should have kept him away for decades, but instead he's going home. That is no small feat. This lawyer, Brian Steele, he basically Johnny Cochran this whole situation. It's crazy. You can say, sure, he pled guilty, but the extraordinary fact is that he is free, more likely a reflection of the state effing this up more than anything else. Typically, a RICO case means you're in jail for a very long time, years in prison, extensive fines, and zero empathy from the court. Even with the best legal teams, defendants rarely come out of this unscathed. But the fact that Young Thug's plea deal lets him go home highlights how unusual this situation is. RICO charges are usually the end of the line, a legal brick wall that most people cannot break through. But this trial was so crazy and chaotic, full with nonsense, the end result was more than basically a compromise than a true conviction. Young Thug's legal team managed to do the impossible, turning a conviction on one of the harshest charges possible into a sentence that keeps him out of jail. Let's talk about how some of the nonsense came to be and why Young Thug was able to beat these charges. And the biggest reason is the courtroom was chaotic. It was nonsense.
Mr. Copeland, good afternoon. Do you want to be here?
Ma'am?
Do you want to be here?
I'm here.
Okay. Well, are you going to let me ask you some questions?
Okay.
How old are you?
Grown.
Okay, what does grown mean?
I'm an adult.
Okay. And when you say you're an adult, what number in years are you?
I plead the fifth.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I get you to step outside to your headquarters of jury deliberation, please? All right. Mr. Copeland, given the fact that you have invoked your Fifth Amendment privilege, but the state has already given you immunity under 24-5-507, this court holds you in willful contempt, and we'll see you on Monday. And we'll see if we can get some more testimony at that point in time. Take them into custody.
It was a circus, plain and simple. Judges were accused, private meetings between the judge and the prosecutors, evidence handling so careless that it felt like they'd never tried a case before. Remember Judge Orwell Granville, one of the key players, was accused halfway through because he just lost his mind and had that little private chat with the prosecution?
That's the only way you can figure out. I tell you what, I'm going to give you 5 minutes. If you don't tell me who if you don't tell me who it is, I'm going to put you in, I'm going to put you in contempt because that is not attorney-client privilege.
Attorney work product privilege. I am not.
How did you get that information supposedly from my chambers? Did somebody tell you?
I'm not. You should have told me.
You got 5 minutes.
Well, I don't need it. I want to continue.
So this trial saw so many people were accusing in and out. It was basically like an NBA game, people coming out of the bench. The defense team was rightfully calling foul every step of the way. This was a major trial. They needed the most unbiased, competent leadership. Instead, it was like watching a bunch of amateurs try to play lawyer. So then you have a judge recused. Then somehow the follow-up judge gets accused. Remember Judge Ingram? She steps in briefly only to peace out as fast as she came in because of conflict of interest. This thing was more chaotic than a Pee Wee baseball game. It's bad enough to have one judge step down. When you have multiple, like it's musical chairs, you have a problem. They finally bring a judge that has some sense, Judge Whitaker, that had to untangle this mess. Imagine being the defense in this situation. You're trying to build the case. Every time you turn around, a new judge is calling the shots. It's like, is this an actual trial or they're just making it up as they go? So let's talk about the prosecution. They were really terrible. They suck. It was embarrassing. The prosecution came in loud with accusations, but kept forgetting to turn over critical evidence to the defense. It's called Brady material, the stuff you're legally obligated to share to ensure a fair trial. But the prosecution must have missed that memo because they withheld it time and again, leading Judge Whitaker to go as far as to order them back to law school for some training.
The prosecutor standing in front of me right now, so I'm not going to say the possible things that it could be, but it is baffling to me that somebody with the number of years of experience that you have, time after time after time, continues to seemingly purposefully hide the ball to the extent you possibly can for as long as you possibly can. And I really don't want to believe that it is purposeful. But honestly, after a certain number of times, you start to wonder how it could be anything but that, unless it is just that you are so unorganized that you are throwing this case together as you try it. And I am sorry to say that, but this case is being made much more difficult for everybody because of the haphazard way in which it is being presented.
After multiple allegations of prosecutorial misconduct, Judge Paige Whitaker ordered remedial training for the entire prosecution team.
I'm just thinking y'all come into the courtroom, there'll be a deputy, you can sit and watch the video and be done with it.
The training, scheduled to take place Monday morning, focuses on Brady, which requires prosecutors to disclose favorable evidence to the other side and other professional obligations of a prosecutor.
Judge Whitaker was not having it. She had an open call to the state for the disorganization. This wasn't a little courtroom slip-up. We're talking about a constant intentional delays in evidence sharing. You can't cry gang boss and then try to play hide and seek with your proof. This level of incompetence is almost painful to watch. If they had a strong case, it was all undermined by the state's shady moves and the utter lack of preparedness. Remember, this is a career case for a lot of these people. It's like they were hoping to sneak by without anyone noticing how shoddy their evidence sharing was. This trial has the honor of being the longest running criminal case in Georgia's history. But it's not because the details were complex. It's because the state kept fumbling procedure details like it was their first rodeo. This was not a matter of a complicated case with things unraveling slowly. This was just a bunch of courtroom mistakes piling up. Witnesses were called and dismissed. Jury issues had been popping up. Jury selection took months. The prosecution was like they were stalling for time, hoping that by dragging this all out, they could find something. Anything that would make their case look legit. When you're going after RICO charges, a case like this should be airtight. The state bringing their A game. Instead, it was one mess after another. And we have to talk about Fonnie Willis, the DA. She's been taking a lot of L's. Be some kind of investigation on what is going on in Fulton County with the judges and the prosecutors, how incompetent they are. And there's a lot of corruption in there too. Fani Willis came into this case as the big shot DA, the tough on crime leader that was supposed to set an example. And what do we get? A courtroom fiasco that looks more like an episode of The Office than a legal proceeding. As the Fulton County DA, this whole thing lands on her feet. And she has a lot of problems that she has to deal with. If you're going to target a high profile person like Young Thug, you better make sure everything is airtight. Instead, this trial was a masterclass in what not to do. Fani Willis had the opportunity to prove herself as a competent DA, but instead, with many other issues that she has done wrong, we're wondering how she got elected in the first place. This trial was supposed to send a message about gang crime, but the only message it sent was the DA's office wasn't prepared and they're pretty corrupt. Personally, if you want to commit crimes and kind of get away with it, first, have a lot of money. Second, be in a county where you have the worst lawyers, the worst judges, incompetent, corrupt. If you have those things, you probably can commit a crime and get away with it. What happens when the same system goes after someone who doesn't have Young Thug's money and resources? Do they get the same sloppy treatment? Do they get railroaded by a system that does not care? Many people get hurt in this process. When we go to court, we want things to be unbiased and fair. And obviously in Fulton County, that's not happening. So Fani Willis can sit back and think about all the years of saying that Young Thug was the leader of this dangerous gang, and the end result is him home on probation. How embarrassing is that? The state hyped this case up like they were taking down Al Capone, but it ends with Young Thug on his mansion laughing at how badly they effed this up. This is just another day in a broken system. I don't know what they should be doing in Fulton County. I don't know if they should have some investigations about some of these lawyers, what happened here, but this is a really embarrassing situation. Props to Young Thug. I guess he was able to move on. Who knows what he did? At this point, I'm surprised they didn't have a mistrial in the beginning when the first judge was around. After that, it should have been a mistrial, but they kept going. And I think with Brian Steele and Young Thug, they probably realized, like, let's take advantage of how stupid the prosecutions are and how they effed everything up, and let's get the best possible deal. And let's not try to roll the dice with a jury. It was probably a strong move by both of them. Brian Steele, his stock has gone up. Everyone that did something wrong is going to probably call him for legal help. So let me know what you guys think about this situation. You've been following this story. Let me know. Put in the comments below. Thank you for taking time to watch this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video.